Right. Welcome. So I'm going to pass straight over to Colin, who's going to show us some of the functionality within Quantify as we look at scenario planning. So Colin, over to you.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, this topic emerged from one of the sessions last week or the week before. So yeah, there was sort of an agreement that we should deep dive into it. We were talking about mapping different processes for different scenarios. And in this session, we alluded that we can do Quantify for different scenarios. So let's have a look at the different approach. And it's also at the same time a refresher on the Quantify module. As usual, don't hesitate to interrupt me. So the part I will skip in this demo is mapping the process. So the process is already mapped. We see my very traditional expenses collection process, scanning a receipt, entering details, submitting, having a manager approving it, and having accountants doing the verification. And let's say there's been some finding in the organization that this process is actually taking a lot of time. And as an organization, we decide to have a look, how long does it actually take, this process? And what if we were changing the solution? What if we were using another tool we found online that claims to be much faster? How much time would be the actual saving? So what we do, we map a process, and then using the Quantify module in the attachments panel on the right-hand side, I have a Quantify, what we call an accordion menu. And I have my Quantify questionnaire that I filled up. So again, these data are very declarative. So that means this will be filled up with what the people are telling us they think the time is, and the times are. But in most of the case, it's really enough to do an analysis and to understand the big buckets of work where the time is going. So some people, in some cases, would want to do a very timed analysis, so like measuring the time it takes for an operator to do a task. And this is not really the purpose here. Here we'll say, right, we know that it takes on average 11 minutes. That's enough information for the kind of analysis Skore will help you doing. So then what I did is I captured all the timings for each box. And if you see, the second question is asking about the volumes. And here there's all sorts of ways we can use volumes, but the simplest, straightforward is to keep the volume to just 1. And I haven't associated any direct costs in this case for when doing this work. So basically very straightforward, just capture the time it takes to run the process. And now I can switch to the Quantify module with the tab at the top. And now I can see the total. So here, let's start simple. Let's say we want to have a look at the costs or the timing on a weekly basis. And I'm using this volume simulation here, configuration panel. And I see that when I do this process once a week, it takes 1 hour and 47 hours, so 1 hour and a half in human time. And actually, we can switch that to human time here. In the configuration panel, we can switch between human time and actual time. So let's keep human time for this demo. If you want to export the numbers or write them down in an Excel file, for example, to write down the compare, it may be better to switch to decimal notation 1.47, as we are not gonna do that now. So my process takes 1 hour and a half. I understand that some people are complaining. Imagine that here it's for one person. Imagine now that we have a team of 10 consultants doing work around the week. And basically I'm dedicating 14 hours of my business total available time, 14 hours, so almost 2 full days dedicated to do expenses. So at this stage, when you look at it like that, you're like, all right, I understand why people want to make a change. So here the Quantify module is very comprehensive. And in the scenario I'm describing, what's interesting us is the time it takes. We want people to spend less time, generally speaking, managing the expenses. The Quantify module is very comprehensive, and we have all sorts of analysis around different topics. So we could look at the costs when we've associated costs for each role. So the hourly cost of a role, like my line manager costs me £50 an hour. My consultant is £70 an hour. So then we can extrapolate the costs of running the process. We also have analysis around the roles specifically. So I have 3 roles involved in this very simplistic process, and I can see how much they cost me. So I can see if there's an outlier. So for example, a very expensive role may spend very little amount of time on a process, but because it's a very expensive role, it just like rockets shoots up the whole cost of the process. And this is what these screens will help you finding out. So should you involve the CEO with a pay of 1 million per hour to approve something that takes 3 hours to do that? And then there's a lot of work around, a lot of modules around iterations. And for the sake of the first, or at least the first part of this presentation, I'm not going to go into. So we have our as-is process. We did some capture, and okay, let's just write down the number now. So we said for 10 expenses reports done per week, it's 14 hours. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, 14 hours. So now we are gonna explore some scenarios. So there are 2 ways really in Skore to do scenarios. There's one where that's quite easy and straightforward, and that's the one I like, is to just create a duplicate of my process. So I have my as-is that I named as-is, and then I will just duplicate it. So, and I will call it to be, but obviously you could have different scenarios with one tool having some features on one other tool, but here in this case, we'll keep it very simple. There's only one other scenario. So I'm gonna capture duplicating my as-is process. So I keep a snapshot of it that I can always refer to. It's quite convenient. Then we can move that or archive it when we don't need it anymore. I'm in my new process that I just duplicated. And what I can go in is look at correcting the timings. So let's say get project code will not change with this new software tools we are going to do, but scan the receipts will be massively simpler. It will be, instead of 15 minutes, 5 minutes, because you just take a picture with your smartphone and that's it. You don't have to use the scanner. You don't have to scan one by one and create a PDF. So very, very simple. 5 minutes on average for an expense report. And then entering the details for each bill. Actually, when you scan, there's an OCR that will recognize all the text and will fill it up manually. So this box actually doesn't exist anymore. We just get rid of it completely. It's not even faster. It's just work we don't do. And submitting takes the same time. Essentially, it's about reviewing the data that has been automatically populated. And it has also this new software we use has an approval module that simplifies that based on statistics. It pre-approves a module. So instead of taking 15 minutes to a manager, it will take 5 minutes because machine learning rules tells me that it will automatically approve all sorts of things that it finds are trustworthy enough. So now I'm going to go for the Quantify module again. And I'm just going to make sure that my volume simulations are the same. So 100 per month. And now I have 63 hours. So that's much more.
I thought you did a week, Colin.
Sorry?
I thought you'd done it by a week.
Per week. Yes, correct. Thank you. Week and a week. Yeah. So, 100 a week. All right. The benefit of the demo criteria roles. Okay, maybe I've typed the wrong number somewhere. I was expecting something much shorter, as we will all do, I assume.
I thought you did 10, no? Not 100.
I did 10?
You started with 1 and then you said for 10.
10 probably, yeah.
Yeah,
10.
10.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah, so 6 hours. So I went for 14 hours to 6 hours. So indeed, there's a business case that seems to be, if the driver of my project is really to reduce the amount of time that people are spending doing expenses. That seems to be a clear winner here. And we can also look at the costs aspects of it to see, all right, if we translate the time people spend on this process into costs, what would be the difference? So now I have two processes in Skore that I can open in two tabs or put side by side. I can report to the number in playing with different scenarios and export that in Excel if I want. So then, yeah, there seems to be a business case of changing the app, especially if my focus is on spending less time on it. Here, obviously, we are not incorporating the time to set up and train the new solution, but that aside, it seems to be a clear business case. So that's one way that is very straightforward. You create an as-is process, you duplicate, and you fill up the new numbers in a different process. Now, what we can also do in Skore is exploring scenarios on the same process. So I've prepared one here. So what you recognize here, you recognize the as-is process at the top. And then we have the to-be process, the changes I made. I created another route here. So we have the as-is at the top. We do that, and I created the route. And now I need to differentiate that, because in Quantify takes all the boxes on a given process when it's not configured. So here it will give me the time of all the boxes, so the as-is plus the new one. So I need to do something else to tell Quantify, all right, let's differentiate these things. So what I do is I'm going back to my standard attachments, and I will use a custom fields. And I created a custom fields called scenario. It can have the name you want. Here I decided to call it scenario, but it doesn't really, as long as it's a name that you can recognize and that is meaningful for your project. So scenario, and I've used a grouping called existing. And I've sort of tagged my activity to say, and I show you, I will do that one for you. So this activity is relevant for the scenario existing, but also relevant for the scenario automation. Okay, so this box is relevant for the two scenarios. This box, scan receipts, is only relevant for the scenario existing, same for this box, but the one under this little group is only relevant for the scenario automation. So basically, I've tagged my activities using custom fields to tell to which scenario they belong. And the benefit of doing that is that not only here I've done only two scenarios, but you could do as many as you want. A box can be part of one or more scenarios, so that's quite cool. But then when I'm going to quantify.
And Colin, just to ask, what you've done there as well is you've used a grouping, haven't you, to visually show what's as is against 2B?
Yes. So I've used the name of the custom field, scenarios, and I've used the grouping automation.
What I meant was by grouping it visually, you've got that box around the as-is process?
Absolutely, yeah. Here I've done a visual, yeah, exactly. So I've done a visual thing to say, and to be consistent, I could also put this one box in one single group. So I can create, indeed, oops, let me zoom in here. So I can create two groups the same size and showing, for example, so that not only I have tagged my boxes to say where they belong, but I've also created something quite visual that may be great if you're showing the process to someone else to show, right, this is the difference. You could imagine using color codes or I've seen some customers recently done a little orange background, but with a very, very low opacity, and that was looking quite good actually. Doing sort of a background for the two scenarios to make it very, very visual. Okay, so switching to Quantify, please. Yep. So volume simulation, let's go back to 10 per week, and I want my results per week. If the criterias, let's go back to all boxes first. So all boxes, that's a bit the thing when you're starting using the custom field, needs to be careful, because in the criteria tab, if I'm using all boxes, it will add up all the two scenarios together. So the numbers are actually completely irrelevant. So now I can enable the filtering. and I can start playing. So let's select only automation. The only automation scenario is 5.33 hours. And the existing or the as-is is 14.67. Let's put the human time, always easier to talk about. What is it, criteria? Yeah, so here I'm in existing, 14 hours and a half, going into automation, 5 hours, 17. So I can compare very easily, compare just by checking the boxes together. I can start playing with my reports and seeing in live all the reports, all the different scenarios. So this way of doing is very good when the main process remains the same, and you can literally do branching of little scenarios like that. Okay, if the new process is really different, like the steps are not done in the same order, or there's less boxes, more boxes, when there's too much difference, it actually doesn't work. So it's really well it works well when we are simply comparing different routes in a process that is overall very similar. Otherwise, we recommend just duplicating a process and creating a new one and quantifying it separately. But we find that it's a very powerful thing to be able to compare numbers just by checking boxes, really. Any questions?
Colin, could I ask if on the process map you had something that was automated on the bottom line as well as on the top line as you have, would you just say that? So if there was something down at the bottom part of it, yeah, down there, could you say that that's in scenario automation as well?
Yeah. So you mean that a box is in both scenarios?
Well, you have the take picture receipt, that's the automation bit. But if there's something on the further down the process that was automated in a new proposed system, you could pick up the two pieces, as it were.
Yeah. So
just by naming them in scenario grouping automation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
I saw Etienne coming off mute a minute ago. Here he comes.
Hi guys. Yes.
Hi Etienne.
Here. Hi. How's it going, Colin?
Very good. Good to see you here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Definitely glad to be here. Yes. It's very insightful. I just quickly want to ask Colin. So, for instance, you got quite a variable of different scenarios, possibly as is and to be processes like on one kind of like canvas or platform for the process. Like you said, you can divide them, but you can also like count them all together, right? So you advise that everything can be summarized together to give you a full quantity of the time that it's going to take from start to finish, including all of the processes. Is there a way that you can? I just want to confirm: is it set as like scenario 1, scenario 2 onto that quantifying summary? Do you just have to physically type in, or can you call it what you want to call it, basically, on that titles? Just
the titles are very open here. They're just using custom fields. So here I use scenario existing or automation. What I did, so another use case we had was to do staging. So different processes will change in different stages. So we can have stages, phase 1, and this box is also done in stage phase 2. So it's very flexible. It's really about, and then if I'm going to quantify, in my criterias, I will see now the stages.
Okay.
So I can say, all right, give me the cost of boxes that are both in phase 1 and 2 at the same time.
No, glad. I'm happy with that. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Cool.
Just going back to the piece about the way you've displayed both the as is and to be on the diagram at the same time. What I found quite effective is when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of this is about just kind of exploring different scenarios to see what might happen. So I've always found it quite useful is the first thing I do is duplicate the process to make that copy, and you know, as a team together, you can just sort of experiment with different things. Like, what if we change this? What if we move this role to this box? And then just by doing that and saying, what if it was 10 times a day or 20 times a day, you start, you know, a picture starts to emerge. And then you might go back and present something like this, which is much more visual once you've kind of got that kind of idea. Because this is really powerful when you present it back to other people. And then you can say, look, here's the standard process, follows the as is. But if we made this change, and this is the impact it will have on the time and cost. So there's always a kind of an exploratory step I found very useful.
Yeah, yeah.
And to Etienne's point, I'd also add that I've certainly found that using the custom field boxes that we were just looking at are you know, really great to use. So if anyone wants any help getting started or they can't quite remember, obviously we'll record this or just give us a shout and we'll just help you set up in the first instance. Because like any of these things, once you've done it once, then you pretty quickly get the hang of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think to Craig's point, so it's another tool in the toolbox that helps starting a conversation. That's really what we find the best. And we had a conversation with people. This is not accurate. The 11. Where is this 11 minutes time coming from? It doesn't like why. Well, how do you know it takes 11 minutes to get a project code? So it doesn't really matter. We know it's not 1 minute. We know it's not 20 minutes. We just pick something in the middle, and that's enough to start the analysis. So this is in 99% of the case of exploring where the time and the costs are going into a process. This is well enough, and you can get a costing of a process in a couple of minutes and have 99% of the value of costing a process just there.
Yeah, what you're trying to figure out, what you're trying to find out is the magnitude of the potential change that you're making. So as you said, if the durations will never be perfectly accurate. I mean, even if you go and collect them, you know, electronically, there's going to be a degree of variability in it. So, but it gives you that chance to be able to say, if we change this step, you know, are we talking about a 10% saving or is it a 90% saving?
Yeah, great. So that was a little refresh on Quantify. Quantify is a very comprehensive toolbox. So I was saying in the beginning, so there's different modules. They may not be all relevant for your analysis. So it's good to know in the first place before starting using it. Are you looking at the time? Are you looking at the costs? Are you looking at FTE utilization that we haven't dug into today? Are you looking at the number of iterations my team can absorb of a given type of task? So it helps you doing a lot of things. Today, we specifically look at duration, but using the same criteria and stuff, you can really deep dive into other dimensions of your processes.
Yeah. Thanks, Colin. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make or any experience using this?
It's been very helpful, thank you. I mean, for us, we haven't used anything on the Quantify so far, and yeah, the comparison looks great. But in addition, for us, we have to assess the costs of our applications, how much it takes us to process an application, and also justify that to our regulator. So having this to enable us to capture that information and manipulate it in a way that we can present it to a third parties is really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, looking forward to see how what you come up with.
Yes, thank you very much. Where did you say you'll have this recording available if we want to go back and look at it again?
It'll be in the community and I'll send a link out afterwards. And we have a YouTube site as well where we store all these as a playlist. So I'll provide all that.
Thanks very much.
Excellent. well.
All right, Colin, sorry, from my side, thank you as well. I think, you know what, also we still have a lot to learn and a lot to play around with. Just makes it a lot easier to start playing around with the quantifying model a little bit more from our side. So I think it's definitely going to help us as well as we carry on with our processes. Thank you.
Great, good to hear.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think next week is a Good Friday for, at least in the UK and Germany as well, I know. So the next session will be on the 9th of April.
That's right. Absolutely, yes, that'll be James Jackson from Acacian. Cool, well, look, thanks very much, everyone. I'll stop recording now, and then as ever, if anyone wants to stay on and have a quick chat, any other issues arising, please do so. But thank you all very much. And thanks, Colin, that was great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Colin.